Remember like a month back, maybe less than that, when my friend Mike and I took his Trek FX1 and we converted it from your typical only human powered bike to a mid-drive powered e-bike. And I said at the end of that video, I was like, man, I really, really want one of these. Something with a throttle that you can just like, pretty much motorcycle. Well, it would seem as though that calling has been answered by Turboant with their this is a new bike in their lineup. That's why they sent it to me, so that I could like show it to you guys. I've got one. We're gonna play with it. Okay, all right, so disclosure time. I am not an e-bike person. What I mean is I know very little about e-bikes. Me, if you're not a regular viewer of the channel, I'm more of like the bike part kind of person. And so when I look at this thing through that somewhat biased lens, I sort of get a little bit lost when I'm like, okay, 500 watt Bafang hub motor. I'm like, okay, 48 volt, 13 amp hour battery, controller to match. Oh, I definitely understand throttle grip. I really like that. And beyond the throttle, which notably is my most anticipated and favorite part of this thing, I really kind of start to focus on the stuff that I am familiar with. And I'm like, okay, aluminum frame specifically designed for e-bikes, along with a nice flat space for the battery to sit on. I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Aluminum fork, keep things light, that's good. Wheels, huge spokes, that makes sense. The bike's heavier than usual. Your typical oversized bar, not super great grips. Mechanical brake lever actuating some entry-level Tektro disc brakes. Quick release seat post clamp, which is good. That means Angela can jump onto this thing without having to use any tool. But a bizarre 30.4 millimeter seat post diameter. I don't really know why. Included fenders, nice touch. Some relatively beefy Kenda K-Shield 26 by 1.95 tires. I'm kind of curious about the choice of the 26-inch wheel size, but square taper crank, huge chainring, and then on the 500 watt Bafang hub, thread-on freewheel, which I'm like, oh, darn, I would have liked to see like a cassette free hub body, but that's okay. Using 7-speed Shimano Tourney drivetrain all around. Like mostly the plastic bits obviously used to keep the price down, but as like a bike guy, I'm like, oh, Tourney. And like I kind of start to focus all my attention on just the shifting, like the entry-level shifting of it, sort of forgetting to focus the attention on all the good quality e-bike related stuff that's on this thing. But honestly, the funniest part of even thinking about what kind of gearing there is on this thing is I don't even use the pedals or the gearing. I'm just constantly messing with the throttle. So the point is mute. It doesn't matter that it has Tourney on it. Who cares? Also Mike is here with his e-bike. He's not using his throttle quite as much. This feels faster than usual. This thing is just kind of like, a dirt bike, and I kind of can't help myself. I think a fun experiment for me as someone who just kind of doesn't have a basis of what like the numbers mean, like what watts, voltage and everything means, like what that means for power, is to take a bike that is kind of designed to be ridden like in the city, ride it on like a mountain bike trail that we've been to before, and just see how 500 watts of hub motor handles coming up a relatively bumpy, you know, I'm gonna say 3, 4, 5% grade, and if it's able to handle it. All throttle. Let's give it a little bit of help. Throttle's going up. Whoa! So 500 watts wanes a little bit on this sort of climb. The bike is obviously not built for bouncing around, but we'll do it nonetheless. And then once it like starts to even out a little bit, the speed comes right back. It's pretty good. You just have to be smart with line choice. Well, kind of back to the intended use of these bikes, not single track trails. I think a good example of 500 watts versus, what's your mid drive right now?
1500.
3 times more power going up this climb. Compare the two, throttle only right now. Yeah, so this is going up, not bad. There was some momentum to actually get the bike up the hill, so it's not weaning nearly as much as that you know, actual mountain bike single track climb where it shouldn't be, but certainly 1500 watts, quite a bit faster.
So I maxed out the gearing that I happened to be in at 28.
You probably got to 28 just a lot faster than me because I felt like I was going 28.
You probably were,
yeah.
But torque takes me there quicker. But at the end of the day, we could be going the exact same speed unless I shift.
Right. It's raining so much. This thing just kind of makes me keep riding this thing as a dirt bike, and I don't think that's ever going to change. Pretty good, right? I would love to say that I'm appreciating the fenders that come included with this bike right now, but I'm completely saturated. Now, considering I'm pretty well exclusively obsessed with the throttle, which I'm not using right now, I think it makes sense to do a very controlled, throttle-only range test. I'm pedaling it to the oval right now, so no range is being used. I will then turn the battery on, throttle around this course until battery dies, and find out how much range you get, purely from throttle use only. I've got my Garmin, I've got my positive mental attitude, I've got a camera, and a fully charged battery. Let's figure it out. So I'm at 10.5 kilometers, still showing 4 full bars, been maintaining about 28 kilometers the entire time. "50 kilometers, descending deeper into madness. How can this still be going?" At 55.1 kilometers, the red light came on. That, like, even though you're just on the throttle, that's still exhausting. Like sitting on there, all the bumps, holding the throttle the whole time. 55 kilometers of monotonous oval circles. So typically I would sort of take any sort of like range rating that a company puts out, publishes, completely with a grain of salt. And I would normally think like, okay, that even that lowest number in the range that they give is probably like optimistic, ideal world settings. And theirs is 56 kilometers. And I hit 55.1 when it started to kind of like, that's pretty dead on. So yeah, this is kind of like this is my first long-term experience getting to have an e-bike around, and I gotta say, it's pretty fun. It gives me a way better baseline of understanding so that if I did do any research, I know where my baseline is and I know where those numbers that I read stack up against it. And then when I see something that's like 3,000, I can go, holy moly, that thing is probably out of control. Like 500 watts for my weight and this bike seems completely and utterly adequate for anything that I'm gonna throw at it. And if need be, if something is too steep or whatever, you literally have yourself that you can pedal up with, which is, you know, what you're supposed to do. But I'm just so obsessed with the throttle. It's never gonna change. Like I said, I keep playing with it like it's a dirt bike. I don't think that's ever gonna change. Literally the ability to pedal it is almost just like a bonus for if I let it die while I'm out and about and I need to get home still. So I kind of want to take this conclusion as an opportunity to thank Turboant for sending me their new Ranger R1. And keep in mind, this is not an ad. They did send the bike, but I'm not paid to like make this video. It just so happens that there's an e-bike in the fleet now that I can play with. I somewhat anticipate maybe putting a rack on this thing and this becoming Work Truck V2. If you are interested in like seeing more of this, there's links below. They are affiliate links. So like if you purchased one through them, I get a kickback. So if you're somewhat interested in your first e-bike, I think maybe this would be possibly the perfect one. I'm pretty happy with having it as my first e-bike. I suspect the same could be true for you. Okay.